Hello and welcome to Camp Xbox. This is a retro Xbox channel, but it's good to pop in and see what's been going on with Xbox nowadays. Avowed is the latest major release under Xbox Game Studios, and I played through it recently. This was not a review copy, and I did not get this for free. And I'm also not getting paid by any game company to cover this. I pay for Game Pass monthly, and it came with my subscription, so no going in that I didn't spend $70 on this, but I did pay for my Game Pass subscription, which I do normally. That also goes into me reviewing this so late, since I wanted to get a fully formed opinion. All footage was captured off of a Series X, and I want to thank my YouTube channel members for their support. Let's go ahead and hop into this review.
You're alive! Thank the gods I pulled you out the wreck when I did. I wasn't about to let the Emperor's envoy die on my watch.
Set in the world of Eora, this game takes place in the universe of Pillars of Eternity, a series that I've never played before, so this is all fresh to me. You play as an envoy for the Adir Empire, and you go to the Living Lands to figure out what the Dream Scourge is, a plague that infects your soul in the tough wilderness that this area has. This is the basis of the plot. But it is an open-world fantasy RPG, so there's a lot more under the surface. There's plenty of side quests, enemies, and things to do in this game. A lot of people, when this game came out, and leading up to its release, compared this to the Elder Scrolls games like Oblivion or Skyrim, but honestly, I don't think that's a great comparison. And I went into this thinking that as well, and I think if you continue playing with that mindset, you're going to be disappointed. Yet, I don't think it deserves to be looked at in that way. It needs to be reviewed for what it is, and not for what it was perceived to be before releasing. And if you want a real comparison, it's Obsidian's other game, Outer Worlds. It's the same small-scale exploration with not much loot. It's not even close to Bethesda's massive explorative open worlds. It's more story over anything else. And I honestly didn't love Outer Worlds either, but the plot and characters is what kept me around. And unfortunately, I found the plot in Avowed to be bland and uninteresting. There's no excellent hook to this game. Moving from area to area feels meandering, and there's no strong draw. It doesn't help that characters feel like archetypes. This game feels like it's going for a cookie-cutter fantasy style we've seen many times before. Conversations are a drag and drawn out, and I found the lore, at least in the way it was presented, to be dry. No one felt real, which in Outer Worlds, characters are what excelled in that game. Those characters felt relatable, but I had a tough time connecting to my party. You play as a godlike in this game, and you speak to the gods, and every one of those conversations is tedious, and I'm a story guy. I need a good plot in my RPG, and I don't think you get that here. I think without that solid, interesting drive at its core, you don't really have much to keep you going. And that's my biggest issue with this game.
Skin of the teeth, the flesh starves, but the soul is resolute. We feel them. They bend and hone the essence of the earth. They draw from our veins like a well.
I think the combat, though, is amazing. Feeling like what a turn-based CRPG would feel like if it came into the first person. It's slower paced, but in a way where the battles stay exciting the whole time. Every battle feels monumental, and you have to be strategic on how you use your team's powers and what weapons you switch between. It has a pacing to it that I quite enjoyed, and it's a tough game too. Personally, I love the guns in this game, and they are all great ranged options with no ammo you really have to think about. At one point, I mixed pistols and a grimoire to shoot, and I was shooting and using spells in between, and it led to a surprising amount of fun. And there's a good amount of weapons here to mix and match, and I think they all feel good, and it's fun to hop between all of them. And I think combat is the best part of this game.
Come and get me!
The game is also gorgeous with amazing vistas and beautiful lighting, and when you're in the Living Lands, the trees and plants, it's all striking and colorful and fun to look at. In the cities, I wouldn't say it's as striking, with more frame rate issues. which I was experiencing even on performance mode. I didn't have any crashes or mini graphical bugs other than that, and maybe my gun poking through some walls. The actual world looks fantastic on the Series X. I just wish the world was more fun to explore. I feel like at times the dungeons were great, but most of the time there isn't much to look at. I felt like there was not enough loot or reasons to go anywhere. You get some chests, but you hardly get anything exciting out of them. It's a lot of crafting materials, and I don't know about you, but for me, I do not get excited for crafting systems anymore. And this one is at least simplistic, but it definitely doesn't have a fun hook. It needs more places to explore, less empty space, and more things to grab. It gets to a point where you think, why would I explore every nook and cranny when all I'm gonna get is something insignificant? The reason you want to explore is to get into great combat and then get awesome rewards for it. And I never felt like I was being rewarded properly for exploring. Another thing though that I enjoyed was the music. It has this fantasy spirit and it's full of strings, and it captures the mood of this far-off land perfectly. And I actually like the sound overall. The sounds of combat have distinct noises with these odd popping noises for gunshots, and I like that. It makes the combat feel otherworldly. It's unique, and I can appreciate the attention to detail on sounds. I also like the skill system here, where it feels simplistic with all of your choices, but with multiple layers of leveling for each perk. No perk truly stood out to me, but I do think the powers are fun, such as the branches that stick onto enemies on the ground. Mix that with powers you get from companions, and it continues to make the combat the best part of the game. On another small note, I found the faces to be well designed and the voice work to be solid. My problem with the conversations though was that there was this awkward cutting style every time your team member speaks, and Outer Worlds kind of has this too. It never gels well with the conversations, and it makes it awkward, and it hardly amounts to anything in the conversation usually. I'm happy to sit down and write and talk about my feelings for this video because it just was an odd feeling while playing this. I was having fun, but I never felt truly engaged. It gets combat down right, which I think is essential, and this felt wonderful to play. I found exploration to just be okay though, but lacked enough to keep me wanting to explore. And I wanted to move from point to point, and when I moved from point to point, I never felt immersed enough to actually go to places where I wasn't being pointed to by the story. Yet the biggest sin here is that the plot felt bland. I felt like the fantasy story had some lore there that could be interesting, but the way it's presented was dry and bland. I was never convinced that there was a great mystery, or I never felt like there was ever a thrilling segment or conversation. Plot sometimes doesn't need to mean anything, especially because I feel like gameplay is the most important part, but here when 50% of your gameplay is stuck in uninteresting conversations, it's obviously going to be a detriment, and it's an RPG. Story is king in RPG, and I love a good plot. And I didn't get that here. Obsidian usually knocks it out of the park with conversations, especially when there are a lot of skill check dialogue choices, which you do get here, but I never found it fun to speak to anyone. Even my companions were all boring archetypes, and I just never connected to them properly. And that's a major issue in this game. I felt like Avowed left me with a very mixed experience. It's fun at times, but just doesn't have a solid drive. At first, I was really enjoying it, but the further you go along, the more and more you feel disconnected from the events of the story, and you get disconnected from exploring. This feels like a game that someone might really love, and I think if I played Pillars of Eternity, maybe I would have liked this one a little bit better. But take this as a review from someone that has never played those, and if you've never played those, I really don't think this is worth a $70 purchase. The way I look at it, it came with my Game Pass subscription, which I always get, so honestly, I felt like I had no money lost. So if you're like me and just have Game Pass, give it a shot. There are some people out there that seem to be really into this one. And you never know, at the end of the day, this is my experience. And the most important opinion is your own. And you'll never know what your opinion is unless you try this game. All I can do is give you my experience as a sort of recommendation, and my recommendation would be to not spend $70 on this one. So overall, encompassing opinion, I just feel really mixed on this game. But if you played this recently, let me know if you loved it, hated it, or felt mixed like me. I would love to hear from you. I think everybody's opinion is important. And I do think that wraps up this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, It really helps me out in the algorithm. Subscribe to keep up with more retro Xbox content, and check out my second channel, Camp Extras, for more retro content in general. And I want to give one more huge shout out to my YouTube channel members. Thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot. But I'll see you here next time at Camp Xbox.